The E-Myth is the myth of the entrepreneur. I remember reading this book 15 years ago and it changed my life. And it could change yours too. So I was at a concert the other night and a young man, Tom, came up to me and started yarning about my videos. And turns out he also lives in Upper Hutt. He's a contractor, got a company, and started asking a bunch of questions about how do you run the business and how do you get off the tools and how do you balance being on the tools versus all of the admin stuff. We talked for about 15 minutes and then I left Tom with a book recommendation. Sometimes I read some of my books so much that the covers fall off, and this is one of them. The book is The E-Myth Revisited. E-Myth stands for Entrepreneur Myth. I'm just going to read here from page 11. So to understand the E-Myth and the misunderstanding at its core, let's take a look at a typical person that goes into business. Not who they are after they go into business, but who they are before they go into business. For that matter, like Tom, who were you before you started a business? Why did you start a business? And what were you thinking when you started that business? Like, what were your dreams and vision? Well, if you're like most people, you were probably working for someone else. So you probably did a building apprenticeship for someone else. And you probably watched how your boss ran his or her company. And you probably decided, one day I would like to be like him or her. You aspired to own your own business. But specifically, what were you doing? You were probably on the tools doing technical work, like almost everyone else who goes into business. It literally says in here, Tom, you were a carpenter, a mechanic, or a machinist. You were a bookkeeper, or a baker, or a draftsman, or a hairdresser. You were a doctor, a graphic artist, or a plumber. But whatever you were doing technical work. And this is really important. You were probably really good at your technical work, and that's why you decided to go into business. But the key is you were doing that technical work for someone else, in someone else's business. And then one day, it happened. You decided to start your own business. It might have been because you had this flash of inspiration. It might have been that feeling that your boss didn't really value you. Or it might have been a vision that you had to put your skills to use a certain way in the market that isn't being done right now. Whatever it is, you decided to go into business. And this book talks about how you were a technician, you were really good at what you did, and then you jumped into business, and the skills that you need as a technician are totally different to the skills you need as a business person. Look at this here that I highlighted years ago on the very first page of chapter 2. The problem is that everyone who goes into business is actually 3 people in one. The entrepreneur, the manager, the technician. Tom and I talked about how you have 3 hats, and you have your technician hat. And this is you being a builder, this is you being the best builder on the tools. But then you had that vision, that inspiration to start a business, and that's what's called an entrepreneur. And that entrepreneur thinks ahead. They see this is not being done in the marketplace, and that's the entrepreneur hat. Then in between the entrepreneur and the technician is a manager. And you've got a manager's hat that you've also got to wear. Now the manager deals with quotes and invoices and paperwork and schedules and sick staff and employment law and GST returns and quantity surveying. That was something Tom and I talked about. They deal with all of those niggly things, whether you're a mechanic or a builder or a plumber or a hairdresser or a draftsperson. At the core of it is still a technician doing technical stuff. But then the manager surrounds the technician with all of the things that take a technician into a business. Then an entrepreneur thinks this is where we're going, and this is how big we're going, or this is how small we're going to stay, and we're going to stay this small because of all of those things. One of the questions I always ask people is, do you read? From an early age, I've always read books. One of the very first books I read as a 17-year-old working my way through the McDonald's management system was The 1 Minute Manager. And I've read hundreds of books since then. I think it's not important about the quantity of book you read or how fast you read it. I think it's about the fact that someone has taken the time to get all of their learning and experience out of their brain and into these pages. And so if I'm embarking on trying to be a better businessman or a better father or a better runner, or a better creative YouTuber, why would I not take the time to read the learnings of other people who have gone before me? You don't just change like that, but the ideas slowly take hold in your mind. And what happens is you then start to see, hey, normally I do this, but how about I give this a go with something little? And then it starts to pay off. And then you give another thing a go and another thing a go. And then you start having conversations with people and you say, the other day I was reading a book about blah, blah, blah. And this is what I think. And that's how words on a page start to become real life. And so what I can encourage you to do is, number one, read books. Number two, ask yourself, what does this mean for me? So for example, I would say, what does this mean for me as a YouTuber or a builder in New Zealand in 2022? And then the next step is, what can I do about it? What's one little step I can do? What's one little takeaway I can put into action? Don't stress out if you don't do everything in the book straight away. It's not a New Year's resolution that you do instantly and try for the first 2 weeks of the year and then fizzle out. It's a way of life. It's a way of running business. It's an approach. Read books. And it says here in chapter 4, always subscribe to NZ Builders channel.
That's good.